Hey guys, I'm back today with a very cool interview with one of our first teachers with VIP Kid. She's in that first 50 teachers with VIP Kid. And so she has a lot of information for us from what VIP Kid was like at the very beginning. I loved having this time talking with Miss Kimberly Grisey. She is one of our workshop mentors here at VIP Kid, and she has been around for 4 years and she has seen it all. So it was a great time talking with her and just hearing what was it like back in the day. And pay close attention. You'll find out who she did her interview with. All right, let's talk with Kimberly.
All right. Well, my name is Kimberly Grisey,
Yeah.
and I've been with VIP Kid since March 2015. So it's been over 4 years now.
Wow, years. That's awesome. So do you know your teacher number?
No, I don't actually, but I came in with the first batch, so I believe there are around 50 teachers at the time.
I was told that you were in that first batch, but I wasn't 100% sure. But that's like the beginning, right? So just give us a little background on like what made you take this leap. This is at this point, an infant company, right? Not even new, just an infant company. And how did you get to this place? And give us a little bit of the story.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I have a master's degree in second language education and also a teaching degree, but finding jobs in the field of teaching in Canada is quite difficult. So I had been trying different things. I was working at a university nearby, the University of Ottawa, and teaching students on conditional offers. So they would come to the program to elevate their academic English in order to pursue their undergraduate or graduate degrees. So I really loved that work, but it all is dependent on student enrollment. How many students are you getting per contract per season? So it was contractual work, and unfortunately the work wasn't always there, especially in the spring or the summertime where there's a lull in student enrollment. I also did some supply teaching, but supply teaching is really hit and miss, right? You have to be available Monday through Friday during the daytime hours. You just have to be ready, have your lunchbox packed just in case, have all of your clothes ironed out, just be ready for that phone call. And at the end of the day, it's not reliable work that you can count on for a steady source of income. So at the time, I was between jobs and still trying to get some work with the supply teaching. And one of my friends had messaged me on Facebook saying, hey, my friend, so I heard from a friend of a friend, and she said, my friend just posted something on Facebook about a little startup Chinese company. Why don't you submit your resume? And I said, sure, why not? I'm submitting my resumes everywhere, so why not? And I mean, looking it up at the time on Google, it yielded no results, right? There were no reviews, there was no YouTube, no Facebook.
I can't imagine.
Nothing. Nothing. I'd never heard of this company. So I had applied, and everything was different back then. So right now everything's kind of streamlined through the teacher portal. It's really nice and snazzy. Back then it was like Google Sheets, and you had to do the conversions, the time zone differences yourself. I actually missed my first interview.
Oh, wow. Because of the conversion.
Exactly.
Wow.
I thought that we were ahead instead of behind. It was my first encounter with these time zone differences, and I messed up. I got an email saying you missed it, and I felt awful. And what I did was I wrote a letter of apology saying, look, my bad. It will not be repeated again. Please trust I will be a great candidate for this. Give me a second chance. And they actually told me that at the time, if people would miss their interviews, they just wouldn't continue with those. They wouldn't pursue it at all.
They were just
now
done.
It's different. Now it's different because a lot of people make this mistake.
Yes.
But back then they didn't, and they just said, it's really your letter that gave you that second chance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
aren't you glad you wrote that letter?
I am. My life would have been completely different had that not happened. So so then I continued on to a mock class, which then was called a practicum evaluation. And little did I know that the person on the other end was our very own Cindy.
No.
The CEO of VIP Kid. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Wow, that is so amazing.
I didn't know it at the time, though. It took me a few months to put two and two together, and she confirmed it later. But now looking back at it, I mean, I was asking her as a reward system to jump around like a monkey, and, and she was such a great sport, and she gave me wonderful, wonderful advice. So then that's what started the journey.
Yeah. So did you start teaching right away after, or did it take time? Because, obviously back then their student base isn't what it is today, right? So what was that like?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. It still took me around 2 months to build up my student base of
Wow.
regular, steady followers.
Wow.
But back then they did, because the system was different. They had minimum requirements for teachers to teach a certain number of hours per week during the peak hours. A lot of things were different back then. And so you'd be on standby, you'd be waiting. We had a substitute teacher program, which is kind of different than what they have right now, where you were just at your computer all the time. And they did have, for a while, they had a wait list for students who wanted particular teachers.
Oh.
And they would go on a wait list because there weren't enough classes made available. But having said that, people think, oh, it was much easier back then because there were fewer teachers. And in a sense it was, but I still had to wait and work really hard for around 2 months to get that student following, get your reputation known among the community.
Interesting. I can't even imagine, just because, what does it feel like for you looking at the portal now as opposed to back then? Do you just think that was archaic, or is it like, yay, this is amazing?
I mean, there are a lot of different changes and things. Some you embrace, some you resist. One thing that I really liked back then was the simplicity of, you could just write your comments, click submit, and then just go into your next classroom. Whereas now we have a bunch of pop-ups. Click this, click that, click this, click that. Check out, rate it 1 to 5 out of all of these scales.
Yes.
So there are more things to click, which takes just a touch more time.
Yeah.
But it's more thorough for the parents. And obviously they've surveyed the parents and they're trying to see, how can we make the product better? So it's all these extra steps for improvement so that the customer is satisfied, which I really appreciate as well.
Definitely. So you started off teaching, and then what happened after that? Because you've done a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had asked me in an email, how many positions or what roles have you worked? And I had to rack my brain, go through my resume. 15 different positions that I can count. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so it was just, it's finding opportunities, right? They didn't all fall on my lap. I had to pursue them. I had to find other opportunities and say, hey, I'd be a great candidate for this, and just push my resume.
Sure.
Other things, right?
Yeah.
So from being a teacher, then we used to have teacher evaluators. I'm not sure, you probably had those when you first started.
Yes,
well.
I did. Mm-hmm.
Right. So it used to be monthly evaluations where mentors would review classes and give some feedback, and it would actually determine the teacher's bonus pay at the time. So I started doing that. I did that for around 6 months before I became the supervisor of the program.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was really exciting. You talk about that camaraderie and feeling like you're part of a team, and we worked so hard to find the best resources for teachers and create materials for teachers, because nothing existed. So we had to kind of build it from scratch. So I worked as that. I have also done work as a mock class mentor. There was even little things like, there was a Chinese competition happening where students were enrolled in this big competition and they needed extra coaching. So I was doing that a little bit on the side too. And it was a lot of fun. All the work that I've done has been a lot of fun, and I like the variety. So currently I'm only doing workshops and I'm a teacher.
Your workshops are awesome. When I started off, I popped into your workshops at the beginning, and I learned so much that I still today, I use so much of that in my classroom. It's so cool. And so it's really cool how you guys can have such a lasting impact on so many teachers when you do those workshops. And
Oh, thank you. I mean, I agree that it's just an opportunity to see different styles, different methods. And, when you talk about the contrast between how it was and how it is now, I mean, my very first class in the VIPKID classroom was a train wreck. It was awful. It was so bad.
Me too. Me too.
And I think one of the difficulties was that when I first started, there just weren't any support teams around. And I think now there's a plethora of resources. You can find things on YouTube. You can go ask different communities. And I think that's really fantastic how you can just find it in various avenues, what you're looking for, and get some answers.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you pursued different roles. So what would you say is if it's okay to ask this question, what is your favorite thing that you've done with VIPKID out of all those roles?
Well, I think as a supervisor, it was kind of my baby project.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of changes, and we we changed the way that we were disseminating information to teachers, and I was really proud of that. With the workshops, I love that you connect with people directly. There's nothing quite like it. Whereas before we had those workshops, you could read information, sure, but you didn't have a face, and you couldn't interact with them and ask instant questions. And I love engaging with people, and people who are nervous, just putting them at ease, and then saying, okay, this is completely normal. And I really like that as well. So probably those two positions, and of course teaching.
Yeah.
Like those kids, they're still kids that I taught 4 years ago that I still teach today. So.
That was my next question. You read my mind. You have some students that have been with you since early on. Now, for you, I got to ask a personal question, though, because you're the mentor, right? Have you ever received a bad apple?
Oh, of course.
Good.
I teach a lot of trial classes, in fact. So, I mean, and this is one thing, this can be really difficult, especially for newer teachers, right? So when I first started teaching, we didn't have parent reviews, okay? And then, so a lot of the veteran teachers have not kind of branched out and taught a lot of new students. So when the parent feedback came into play a year or a year and a half later, then they were only getting 5, all these amazing apples from their favorite students, and say, wow, I've never gotten a bad apple rating, and if you do, then there must be something wrong. That's not entirely the case.
Right.
And the thing is, it's understanding the parent expectations. And I was speaking with the departments at the head office in Beijing of ones who review parent complaint classes as well. And, they find that sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between the expectations in Chinese education and what we offer in North American education. Yeah. And so sometimes, and they're not themselves educators, not all of the parents are.
Right.
So maybe they're looking for something, or maybe they have different opinions, or for whatever reason, they might give a low score. So for whatever reason, it can happen. And that's why we have a review team to say, yes, this was a legitimate concern, or no, this was way off base.
Right.
And, for newer teachers, they get really discouraged if they get anything lower than 5 apples.
Right.
But the thing is, with these parents, especially new to the program, they don't exactly know what to expect. And so their style of rating is going to change as well. It'll evolve with the company.
Right.
But the ones who have already been with the company for 4 years, they know the drill, they know how it works. So it's a little bit of a trial and error, but then once you find your niche of students, then they love you. They keep coming back because they love you, and it's reflected in the Apple ratings.
And I see so many people that get so upset. What would you give as advice? What would you say to them when they open it up and they see that first 4 or that 3? What would be your advice to those teachers?
Well, I would say, firstly, their first reaction shouldn't be defensiveness, right? I think they should be open to any criticism, because that's how we grow. A lot of teachers are not aware of this, especially newer teachers, but you can actually re-watch your classes. And I think that is probably the best thing that they can do is rewatch the class themselves, take some workshops, try to seek advice of how they can improve. It could be that the parent was way off base, as we mentioned before, or it could be that they had some legitimate concerns and you have some areas for growth. I think we all do. So it really helps to go back in and rewatch it. It'll be painful, you know, get some popcorn, get a tissue box. What was I doing? Yeah. Talking about learning styles, there was this one class I remember when I first started. I was very stressed out. You know, as new teachers, you're very stressed. You're looking at the clock going, oh my gosh, we only have 25 minutes. So many slides to get through. Oh yeah, stars and high fives and rewards and yeah, oh yeah, here's a prop, here's a prop, here's a prop. You know,
that's exactly what it is too. Yeah. Things are flying everywhere.
Exactly. And I remember, and you're trying to get the student to participate, right? But you're asking and waiting, and you're just looking at the clock going, why aren't you answering? Instead of giving them sufficient time to answer. And one student in particular, when I rewatched the playback, I noticed that I had asked him a question. He seemed expressionless, so I just moved on. But in watching the playback, I noticed he was drawing his answer.
Oh.
He was drawing a picture, and I realized, wow, he's very visual. Okay, so for our next class, let's give him time to draw some pictures. And that's how he's going to recall the vocabulary words, and we can work with this. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't rewatch it. Well, currently I'm only doing the ones for new teachers.
Okay.
For kickoff workshops, but previously I've taught a number of them, and I really like TPR and demonstration. Yeah. A lot of teachers think it's about themselves moving around, but not about the student. Once the student makes that connection and they start moving around, it's a game changer. So I really like that one. A lot of newer teachers they don't know how to open up time slots, and they, you know, it's very common, and just little things that, you know, we can walk through it with them. I would say too, even if they've taught a few classes and they have their bearings, it's always worthwhile to go to those workshops, because they'll either reinforce a concept that they've previously learned, or they might pick up on something new. It is really nice. It's complimentary to take those workshops just to learn. Even if it's one or two new things per workshop, you know, that's really helpful.
So,
absolutely.
So much. It's so cool. Well, I have loved getting to hear your story. This is amazing. I could go hours with you. I can't even imagine from the beginning until now. You must feel like it's such a big shift. So what would be, if you could just give one piece of advice to a brand new teacher, what do you think it would be?
So at first, when a lot of teachers join the program, they say, wow, these classes are so exciting. But then you teach the same thing over and over and over and over again. I mean, if you were in an elementary school, you might teach that one specific lesson once in a whole year, or maybe twice. So it can get really tiresome, and people, after the wow wears off, then they feel like, what's next? It's always the same routine, and I want something different. So I would say, try to find something that can change the routine. If you're feeling as though your teaching is getting stagnant, maybe look for different ideas, or try to incorporate, as we mentioned, the workshops. Those are really great. YouTube videos, of course, but also watching yourself, your videos and certifications, as you mentioned. But try something different, because this company has a lot to offer. And even
well, thank you so much for giving me this time. I so appreciate it, and I look forward to getting to meet you here soon. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, Journey Conference.
I know. Yay!
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me your time. You have been amazing, and I just want to thank you again for all of the work that you've done for us as teachers. You have really, truly mentored so many of us, and
don't you just love her? I loved talking with Kimberly. She is so sweet and so amazing, and she has such great information to help us. She's a wonderful, wonderful mentor. I really encourage you, if you're a new teacher or even a teacher that's been teaching for a while, go hit her workshop and get some more good stuff from her. Thanks so much, Kimberly, for spending that time with me, and I hope it was helpful to all you teachers. Don't forget, subscribe and hit the bell so you can get another video coming to you soon. Thanks. Bye. Bye.